Hey, so I want to talk about a controversial issue that is the issue of LGBT rights in the continent of Africa. This is very topical, of course, because President Obama has made a much reported visit to the continent, to Kenya especially. Today he was in Ethiopia. He's discussed a lot of issues, economic cooperation, development, Africa's future generation, security, especially Al-Shabaab. Um, and there's been some jubilation, some light-hearted moments, for example, dancing uh, with traditional Kenyan dance, this sort of thing. But probably the gay rights thing has been the most controversial issue. Um, Yesterday, he spoke to a group of young people in Nairobi, and he was with President Kenyatta. Now, my understanding is President Kenyatta's response has been that the gay rights issue is not an issue in Kenya. I just want to share my thoughts on this. And there's a few things I'd like to say. First of all, um, I am talking about the continent of Africa. Now, that may sound like a generalization, but this is something that really is a trend across the entire continent. Um, LGBT discrimination. I'm well aware that there is quite a common response. I would say 70 to 80% of Africans who comment, for example, on BBC World, have your say, would take quite a defensive view on this, and their view would be, the West is imposing its values on African countries, and very often culture and tradition is used as an excuse. Um, I want to just talk a little bit about this subject. Firstly, it is a widespread issue because, with the exceptions of South Africa and to some extent Mozambique and Botswana, pretty much every African country has laws discriminating against gay people. South Africa is the only country in Africa that permits gay marriage, and there's no shortage of homophobia in South Africa. A while back, there was reports of so-called corrective rape, which was a disgusting phenomenon of lesbian women being raped to somehow correct them, which was utterly abhorrent. Um, you know, I want to make something clear. I'm a straight man, okay? So I've got no gay agenda here. I'm attracted to women, okay? Um, as a straight man, my message to straight African men, heterosexual African men, is why are you so frightened? Why are you so frightened? What do you really think that gay men are going to do to you? Do you really think they're going to force you to take part in gay acts? Um, if a gay man comes on to you, push him off, tell him where to go. Um, but the fact of the matter is that is not what is happening. All of this discussion about gay rights, nobody is calling for a gay pride parade in Nairobi or Addis Ababa or Lagos or any other African city. That's not what people are pushing for here. What people are pushing for is basic human rights, the basic right to live in freedom, and basically to not be murdered. That is actually what we're talking about. Nobody is talking about a huge gay pride festival. We're talking about the basic right not to be murdered simply for sexual orientation. Now, it may be your view that it's immoral for religious reasons. It may be your view it's unnatural, whatever. And the thing is, nobody is saying that you can't have that view. All President Obama has spoken about, and all the other outside leaders have spoken about, and the UN has spoken about, is basic human rights. And frankly, I see double standards in this because very often I see this idea of, um, and I have to be careful how I say this because it could be misinterpreted, but I think it has to be said. Very often I hear Africans complaining about not being on an equal footing and there's still a neo-colonialist attitude. I've seen a lot of Africans complain about this. So the notion is that they are still being oppressed, indirectly, but somehow they're still being oppressed. And yet they don't see any problem with oppressing fellow Africans. So when I hear that this is somehow a racist thing, um, and I've heard that from one or two sources, this is a strange argument to make. is the very people that I'm talking about here are black Africans, gay men and women who are fellow black Africans. So this is about, to argue that somehow a racist position, to argue for the human rights of LGBT Africans is bizarre to me. And frankly, if you're scared of homosexuals, that to me suggests that you're insecure. Seriously, just step back for a minute. Nobody is calling for a gay takeover of Africa. That is not going to happen. Because despite what you may believe, the LGBT population in Western countries is still a minority. They haven't taken over. Yes, we have laws protecting gay people, but there is no takeover of by gay people. So that's something that is just utterly misguided. Um, Take a country like the United Kingdom, we have some of the most liberal laws in the world regarding gay rights. Does that mean that I, as a straight man, am suddenly going to be forced to become gay? Of course not. I have complete freedom to be attracted to women. And if I fall in love with a woman and I marry her, I have complete freedom to do that. So what gives you a right to say that gay men in your country, um, I'm not even talking about marriage here, I'm talking about the right to simply be the way they are. And another thing, this idea that they're corrupting young people or you're associating them with pedophilia, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever for that. There's no evidence to suggest that pedophiles are gay. I mean, how do you explain a heterosexual man who abducts young girls? He's not gay. So a lot of the claims that are out there to demonize gay people they just fall flat. So I do applaud President Obama for taking this stand. I do believe it's important, and I think he is right to say that these human rights violations hold Africa back. Now, obviously, it varies from country to country exactly how severe the laws are, but people will say, "Oh, well, this is democratic because there is popular support for it." Okay, it's democratic, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's right. Um, there was many repressive notions that were popular in the past. In this country, we have public hangings as a form of entertainment. Now, if you take an opinion poll in Britain in the 1780s, probably most people would have supported that. Today, we think it's barbaric. My point is, just because something is popular, just because you use culture or religion to justify it, doesn't mean it's right. And I regard basic human rights as pure, pure truth. It's We're talking here about basic human freedom. Nobody is calling for gay pride parades. Nobody's even calling for gay marriage. All people are calling for, all LGBT activists are calling for, is protection, not to be killed. Because at the moment, most African countries do not have specific laws protecting gay people. In other words, you can murder a gay person and pretty much get away with it. That's an utter abomination. Now, I don't know if the laws, if that would cover, like, okay, you'll be arrested for murder. But the point is, by promoting homophobia, African governments are actually inciting hatred against their minority populations by not offering protection. And the point is, LGBT communities in Africa really do need protection right now. There is no gay takeover. And frankly, looking outside the continent of Africa, those US mega preachers, especially in the deep south, especially in red states, who are stirring up hatred against the LGBT community, I say shame on them, complete shame on them, because they've a lot of sway in Africa, and they're using that influence to stir up hatred, and I think it's reprehensible. Will this cause a gulf between Africa and other countries? Unfortunately, on some level, it will. I'm afraid I don't see any other. I think the Western countries could find common ground with Africa, for example, on combating terrorism, trade agreement, this sort of thing. But on the issue of human rights, this is something that really needs to be dealt with. By the way, if you're saying Africans don't support this, Africans don't believe that, whilst it is a common trend, I think it's a bit arrogant to suggest that all Africans think alike. There's over 1 billion people in the continent of Africa. And whilst I concede that a lot of people hold conservative views on this, the idea that it is a general position is just plain wrong. For one thing, gay Africans who aren't necessarily going to come out, they will, of course, they'll want more protection and they'll want more freedom. And they've got every right to that. Unfortunately, this is an example of religion holding Africa back and culture being used as an excuse to trample basic human rights. Now, I know this video isn't going to be popular with any African viewers. If you are a gay African, please do share your thoughts here. I want to hear from you because I know it's difficult in that position. But I completely applaud President Obama bringing this issue up. It's not about imposing Western values. It's about imposing universal human rights. And actually not even imposing, just making the basic point that countries cannot go forward without basic human rights. Nobody is talking about turning Nairobi or Addis Ababa or Lagos or wherever into, a big gay villa. No one's calling for that, and there will never be a situation where there will be a gay takeover. That's not going to happen. So stop being such wimps. Frankly, man up and stop being so scared of your gay compatriots because they're not going to do anything to you. You know, Africa's got a lot of qualities. There's many things Africa could be proud of, but this frankly pathetic fear of gay men and lesbian women is it's not doing Africa any favors. That's my opinion. You can disagree if you want, but I believe Africa is letting itself down by persecuting and in some cases outright terrorizing its gay community. This is disgraceful. And frankly, when you have a mob terrorizing a gay man or a lesbian woman, that's cowardly and it's despicable. And it is not going to bring your country into it's not going to help that country to develop. The countries in the world that are most developed are also the countries that have the greatest emphasis on human rights. So, a final few words. Am I telling Africans what to do? No, but I'm simply stating the fact that countries cannot go forward when such basic freedoms are denied. And hopefully, one day in the future, this will be realized because it is about common sense. Now, you can say it's one big Western plan to take over, but consider this. Some of the most homophobic opinions come from Western countries. If you look at some of the powerful clergy in the deep south of the United States, now I would ask you the question, what have they done for Africa in terms of development? What have they done? So ask yourself, is their influence positive or negative? What's more important to Africa? Given all the challenges that Africa faces, given terrorism, given conflict resolution, given poverty, given all of these issues, corruption, why is it that the gay issue, why is it so many Africans put such an emphasis on persecuting the gay population when there is much more important issues? Gay people are not a threat, but the only reason this is being brought up is because they are being terrorized, and it's disgraceful. And the countries that do take this more seriously and do have a better track record, such as South Africa, Botswana, and Mozambique, actually are among the more developed African countries. So that says something in itself. So I just hope there is a re-evaluation of this. At the very least, there needs to be some laws to protect the gay population. Nobody is calling at this stage for gay marriage. That's something that can be debated. Even in Western countries, that's still debated. So no one's calling for gay marriage. Nobody's calling for gay pride events. No one's calling for big gay orgies. All people are calling for is basic human rights.